Hello, good morning. Welcome to this course, Ecosystems and Biodiversity. And for today, we are going to look at two ecological concepts. The two major ecological concepts we're going to look at are ecosystems and ecological succession. As it were, ecological succession is actually harnessed from the term ecosystem. After understanding ecosystems, that's when we basically understand what ecological succession means. Okay. All right. The general understanding of ecosystems entails what they comprise. Okay. What do ecosystems comprise of? For this purpose, we're going to understand that an ecosystem, okay. Hello? All right. So the general understanding of ecosystems entails that they comprise of living organisms. Now, if they comprise of living organisms, okay, hello? Okay, so as they comprise of living organisms, we must understand that the living organisms are going to interact with an environment. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, back. Are you getting me now?
Yes, I'm getting you.
All right. So the general understanding of ecosystems is what we are looking at, meaning what do they comprise of? All right. Okay. So living organisms are going to interact with the physical environment. The way they interact is through the flow of energy. They have to transmit energy, meaning energy has to be transmitted from one organism to the other. Now, in as much as energy is being transmitted, we are saying, okay, there is a physical environment involved. Now, this physical environment is further classified into two, meaning there is an environment that comprises strictly living organisms, meaning living organisms can interact with other living organisms. Further still, you may understand that living organisms may also interact with non-living organisms in instances where living organisms interact with soil. We have seen plants growing. Actually, they are actually interacting with soil at that moment. Now, the two major classifications of the physical environment are biotic and abiotic environment. Now, when we say abiotic environment, okay, we mean an environment that deals with non-living organisms. But biotic, on the other hand, refers to an environment that has to do with the living organisms. Okay. The same way you classify symptomatic and asymptomatic in these days of COVID, when they say symptomatic, they mean with the symptoms. And when they say asymptomatic, it means without symptoms. In the same way, we're going to say biotic with life and abiotic without life. Of course, by definition, we can say biotic environment refers to all living things in a given area, such as plants, animals, and many others. So those are examples of biotic environments. When we are referring to living things, okay, an environment that comprises of living things, it is actually what we call biotic environment. However, abiotic, okay, environment, abiotic is just the opposite. A biotic environment will refer to an environment that comprises of non-living things, meaning we are talking about a situation without life. Now, when an environment is discussing things such as soil, climate, weather, atmosphere, and the sun, these are non-living. So this non-living environment makes up what is called a biotic environment. So in an ecosystem, organisms interact with environments, with their environment at biotic level and at a biotic level, meaning they can interact with other living organisms and they can interact with non-living organisms. In the process, there is a flow of energy. Okay, take note, very important point. All ecosystems depend on energy that primary producers capture from the sun. We earlier on said there is a flow of energy. Where does this energy come from? So we are speaking of the sun as the source of this energy. Plants will trap this energy from the sun. Okay? They will trap this energy from the sun through processes such as photosynthesis. Okay? Hello?
Hello.
Are you getting me?
Yes, I'm getting you.
Yeah. So as it were, so all ecosystems will depend on the energy that primary producers will capture from the sun. Now, this energy is actually captured by the process of photosynthesis. When photosynthesis takes place, it means energy has entered into the ecosystem. And this is the energy that is going to be transferred from one organism to the other. Now, for this reason, energy flow in an ecosystem is very, very important. Okay? It's crucial to the process that we are going to talk about. So as it were, okay, we have a diagram that will actually show the energy flow. Hello, are you getting me?
I'm getting you.
All right. All right. So energy flow in an ecosystem, as you can see.
I'm getting you.
Yes, yes. All right. So we can see that there are producers there. Okay, are you able to see?
Yes.
Okay. The producers there in green represents things such as plants. So the plants will harness the energy. They will trap the energy from the sun. Have you seen that yellow part? It shows that energy has been transmitted from the sun, has been trapped by the producers. Now, we can see those arrows there. Going to the consumers, decomposers. Are you able to see?
Yes.
All right. It means producers, in the process, they will transfer that energy to consumers. Now, in as much as they transfer that energy to consumers, there is energy lost. We can see those arrows that shows energy loss. Okay. So they are actually going to the...
Excellent, sir. Excellent.
All right. So the producers are actually transmitting that energy. It's flowing to the consumers. Further, from the consumers, it will go to the decomposers. Meaning at that moment, producers are living organisms, consumers are living organisms. It is at biotic level. Living organisms and living organisms are sharing, they are interacting that energy flow. Okay, so you must understand that consumers may also send to decomposers. Decomposers may also be classified as living organisms. Now, at this instance, we are talking about fungus, bacteria. Those are actually what we refer to as decomposers. In the process of transmitting energy from one organism, as you can see, from producers to consumers, some energy is lost. And from consumers to decomposers, also energy is lost, okay, to the atmosphere. Yes. Now, decomposers, in the process, they will decompose that energy, okay, and it will go to actually non-living organisms. Now, at that level, when decomposers, okay, die, meaning there is death of organisms at that moment, okay, meaning they will actually refer to interacting with non-living organisms, a term that we had earlier on described as a biotic environment. So you can see when producers transfer the energy to consumers, it is biotic environment. But when decomposers transfer that energy to non-living matter, such as soil, then we refer to that as what? A biotic environment. All right. So what are producers then? Okay. So in simple terms, they are organisms that trap energy from the sun into an ecosystem. Okay. Through the process of photosynthesis. However, you may have a question. What happens in water? Okay, depending on the type of ecosystem. You remember in previous topics, we had discussed what we call an ecosystem being classified into terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem. Now, typically, what we are discussing here is a terrestrial ecosystem. In aquatic ecosystem, there are planktons. That is what in water bodies, there are planktons. There are special plants that actually also photosynthesize. They trap the energy from the sunlight. So in water bodies, there is a certain depth at which the sunlight energy can reach, which we call the photic zone. So in that photic zone, those planktons, they actually generate energy, okay? And that's energy flow in aquatic ecosystem, the water bodies. However, for today, I want us to concentrate on what we call the terrestrial ecosystem, okay? So therefore, if producers are going to make their own food, they are going to generate their own energy, okay, without feeding, they are essentially referred to as autotrophs. So take note that producers are called autotrophs because they generate their own energy. Autotrophic is that is a way of generating energy, okay? What of consumers then, okay? So consumers are organisms in an ecosystem that obtain their energy through feeding. Now, these are supposed to feed. If consumers are supposed to feed, they don't generate their own energy, okay? So if they are supposed to feed, they are not going to be called autotrophs. Definitely they will be called heterotrophs because they have to feed in order to obtain energy, okay? So plants do not feed to obtain energy. At that level, when plants generate their own energy, they are called autotrophs. But consumers, on the other hand, are referred to as what? Heterotrophs. So these consumers are at levels again. They are primary consumers that directly feed on primary producers. Those like herbivores, we are talking about goats, cattle, okay? Those that directly feed on grass, direct feed on plants. They are actually called the primary consumers. On the other hand, secondary consumers feed on animals that eat on plants. For instance, if a lion can feed on a goat, then it is called a secondary consumer. Okay? All these are referred to as what? Heterotrophs. Now, this brings about the feeding relationship concept. Now, if in as much as we have discussed to say consumers will feed, because there is feeding and there is flow of energy, it brings about these new concepts. Okay? So when you're discussing the feeding relationship concepts, we refer to mainly food chain, food web, and decomposers. Okay? So what are food chains then? Food chains simply show the transfer of food energy, not another source of, not another energy. Like energy is light, energy is chemical, but we are talking about, in this case, food energy. Okay, the energy that was obtained, okay, that was generated by the plants as food, it has to be transferred. So the transfer of food energy from producers to consumers is what we call a food chain. So simply that there is energy flow from producers to consumers, it creates a food chain because consumers have to feed. On the other hand, food web, we are talking about a number of food chains. Of course, they interact. If we have grass, this grass can be eaten by a goat, and a goat can be eaten by a lion. The same grass again can be eaten by another herbivore, okay, probably an impala. This same impala can be eaten by a fox. With this fox again can eat the same goat again. So we find that a number of food chains can interact, okay, and when they interact at a more complex manner, then they form what is called a food web. So take note of these two terms: food chain, food web. Decomposers are other than what we say consumers. We have also decomposers. So decomposers, they can also harness the energy. Okay. So as they harness the energy, okay, it is obtained from actually the consumers. Okay. So the other name that can be referred to as decomposers is organisms of decay. Usually they are bacteria, fungi, and they are found at each level of the food chain. So each food chain you're going to come up with, make sure at least in each level, you must understand that in that food chain, it will come to extinction and they are what we call decomposers. Okay. Other concepts related to ecosystems will be actually food pyramid, okay, as well as biomass, okay, referring to a way of expressing there. When we talk about a food pyramid, we are referring to a way of expressing availability of food in an ecosystem at a successive number of trophic levels. Biomass referring to the total mass, total dry weight of food at each level of the pyramid. Of course, we had looked at these terms earlier. Okay, so we can move on and look at these two concepts. Okay, so those will be discussed later. So I want us to understand these terms that we have actually put across. What do you understand by the term trophic structure? What is a trophic structure? Okay. Name the two major classification of ecosystems. Construct a food chain comprising of 4 trophic levels. Then construct a food web for a terrestrial ecosystem. Now, these questions are a follow-up to the lecture. They are a follow-up to the points that we have just earlier discussed. Okay. Okay, so do you have any questions that you can ask for now before we proceed?
No.
Okay, if I may ask you.
No, wait. Question 3, sir.
Question 3.
Yes.
Construct a food chain comprising of 4 trophic levels.
Is it the one which we are doing, like we start with the grass, like that?
Yes, a food chain. That's what we mean. When we say a food chain, it has to start with a producer. Okay?
No.
So if it starts with a producer, all right, then it actually, from a producer, there is a consumer. From the consumer, what follows? Okay? So make sure you make 4 trophic levels, right? So meaning producers are a trophic level, consumers are a trophic level, then it goes to decomposers, another trophic levels. Now make sure there are 4 trophic levels, right, in that food chain. So you are going to construct a food chain comprising of 4 trophic levels. Then number 4, you are going to construct a food web for a terrestrial ecosystem. You understand what a terrestrial ecosystem means?
I've forgotten.
Of course, the ecosystem is classified into 2. We said there's ecosystem that pertains to water bodies, right? So an ecosystem, when living organisms in water, that is called aquatic, ecosystem. Okay. Then living organisms can also interact on land. Okay. So on land is what we call terrestrial ecosystem. Okay. So we expect you to mention an ecosystem or to write a food web that contains organisms on land. Okay. So of course I'll need the answers at some point. So for today, I want us to
what?
For today, I want us to end there. If you don't have any questions.
I said question 1.
Question 1. You have a challenge with question 1?
I didn't get you clear.
Okay. What does question 1 say? What do you understand by trophic structure of an ecosystem? Trophic structure of the ecosystem, yeah. It's more like the pyramid, those pyramid where it shows the producers, consumers at that level. Okay.
Then I have to explain them.
Yes. So once you answer those questions, I may receive the answers. I will text you the modalities of how I can receive.
Oh.
Okay. So the next lesson, now we are ready and we can proceed to the term ecological succession. Remember, ecosystem was just more like a recap of what we have been looking at. Okay, so I wanted to make you ready for the next lecture, ecological succession. Now, what are we going to be looking at under ecological succession? Okay, those are the points that we'll be looking at. We are going to explain what succession is. We are going to identify primary and secondary succession. So explaining the causes of succession as well. Are you able to see?
Yes.
Okay. If you're able to see, then those are things that we'll be looking at. Because we were supposed to look at directly ecological succession, but I thought of rolling you a bit back on what ecosystems are. Okay. So now we are ready to go. So the next lecture will be looking at ecological succession with those learning outcomes. Okay. Hello? Okay.
No,
so
just now, sir.
Yeah, you can ask.
No.
Eh?
We'll be learning now.
No, we are done for today.
Or tomorrow.
Yeah, just tune in for another lecture.
What are we having next?
Check your timetable.
So I don't understand that.
Satu weekend.